Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Mrs. Mummypenny Talks with Ridley Wrights. And today we are talking about busy women. Specifically, we're looking at rest and productivity and how much any of us get of the former and how that affects the latter. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. However, before we kick into that, we have to start with our weekly tradition of checking in with each other. So Lynn, how are you doing? How's your week been?
Hey everybody, great to be back here again after 11 weeks. I've had a lovely week. Let me think, what's the most exciting thing? I've been doing lots of like big sort of media PR-y type stuff last week. So I did some filming for the BBC for a program that's coming out in September, which is all about, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say what it's about, so maybe I won't say that.
Don't risk it.
No. But yeah, no, filming crew were here for 3 hours on Thursday. And it was the day when it was my worst day for cold sore. I had like 4 cold sores last week. It was very traumatic. But great tip that I must share, because I've tried so many things to fix cold sores. There's this herbal remedy called lysine, Lysine. I was popping like, you're generally meant to take 1 pill a day to sort of help your immune system. I was taking 3 pills a day and it literally got rid of them in 48 hours. It was amazing.
Amazing.
I couldn't quite believe it. So, but anyway, I did like a load of TV stuff with like bright red lipstick, trying to like disguise all these cold sores on my lower lip. But I kept saying to the like camera man and the producer, like, can you see the cold sores? Can you see the cold? They're like, no, it looks fine. Don't worry. Stop stressing about it. But anyway, so they didn't think I was really vain, because they just thought I was funny. But anyway, so that's exciting. We had to go out on location and like film stuff in Stevenage as well. So it was, and you know, all that inevitable like members of the public walking by like, oh, need to do my hair as I'm going to be in the camera shot, or like planes going overhead or buses going by. So it ended up with a lot of takes, but yeah, it was good. So that was one of my fun things last week. How about you?
I had a really good week. Lots of things happening. Did some group coaching workshops, and they went really well. Yeah, that was last week, which was really great fun. My big news is that in the war between cats and dogs, the battle on Monday was won by the cat, who swiped our barely 12-week-old puppy across the face, and his claw perforated the cornea and the iris and just narrowly missed the lens of my puppy dog's left eye. Which means that if it had perforated it, she would have had to have had an operation. She would have developed cataracts and things, and you know.
Oh my god!
Yeah, all sorts of really bad things. We think we've just narrowly missed. We have to take her for a checkup on next week. But yeah, so she's in a collar of shame right now and has to have 5 different types of medication 3 times a day, all of which, well, actually no, she doesn't actually mind. The bit I worried about was the antibiotic tablet. I was like, oh, tablets and dogs, come on people, can't you think of a better way of dressing up drugs to give to animals? But turns out if you just wrap it in chicken, she doesn't even know. She gets really excited. She's like, oh my god, the tablet box is coming out, I'm gonna get some real chicken. So that's good. And then my other really exciting news is that this arrived yesterday. I am holding a green journal or notebook to the camera. It's from the Backlash Press. They're a publishing company that are currently doing a project called the Living Notebook or the Living Journal. And the idea is that I've been randomly selected as one of 12 writers and artists from around the world to fill in this notebook for the next 10 days, well, 9 days now. And when I'm finished with it, I send it on to the next writer who lives in another country, because it's 12 people from 12 countries. And it's going to take a year to travel the globe, and then they're going to do something interesting with it. and publish it at the end of all of that. So that's terribly exciting.
So is there any guidance with what you write about, or you can write anything?
It's about kind of creative consciousness, I think, in
Okay.
the main. So the idea is that I'm supposed to write about my writing process and my kind of life and any thoughts and feelings that come to me. You can put anything in there. You can put lists in there, doodles, yeah, whatever you like. You can stick things in there, I hope, because I already have stuck something in there. And there's a bunch of things I need to do, like little videos of myself and stuff over the next few days. So that's quite exciting too, because I'm absolutely rubbish at doing videos, don't have any of the right equipment. It's me with a phone going, yeah, this is my armpit, and hi, these are my teeth up close. So,
You put a video up yesterday on your Instagram page of you like unboxing your notebook. It was so funny because you really need to up your video game. Like, partway through the video, it like stops and you have to restart it again. Then there's quite a big section of the video that the sole focus is the cat sat behind you.
The cat had the focus, because like actually you can see the book being unwrapped, but nobody looks at that because the cat's far more interesting, licking himself, thinking about his next act of vengeance against the dog, you know. Yeah, it's bad, but it's done, you know. That's the thing. And maybe I'll learn more about videoing better during this project. I need one of those little stands. I think that's what I need to do.
It wasn't bad because it was just like real life, natural. It was just funny.
There's a reason I write. Yeah. Anyway,
well, yeah, we do this stuff all visually, so
I know. No.
Okay.
Anyway, let me talk about our topic today.
Yeah.
Busy women, rest and productivity. So this was actually suggested by a listener. Verity copied me into, or tagged me in a post on Instagram about you know, the notion of rest being productive, and that this is something that we generally in our hectic 24/7 society don't really do. We don't actively rest, and also I think particularly as women we're quite bad at resting. We sort of think we've got to get everything done, we have to earn rest as a reward, as opposed to seeing it as something that we should do regularly throughout the day. And I think it's interesting because there's a definition we might need to make as well between kind of rest and sleep. So there's also an awful lot of evidence that documents the enormous importance of getting sort of 7-8 hours of sleep a night, and how that has huge benefits in terms of both productivity, mental health, overall physical health, etc. And actually there's an increasing body of research and work. A lot of it's quite empirical, it's quite kind of, yeah, it's based on studies of people, but that also shows that resting regularly throughout the day has really important health benefits as well. But before we dive into that, I think there was something you wanted to share that came up for you.
Yeah. We've obviously been planning this episode, and the beauty of mobile phones, I don't know whether you want to call it the beauty or the big brother effect of mobile phones, is my phone's now been showing me loads of sort of quotes and things from people relating to busyness. But something came up on my Instagram last night from somebody who I follow on Instagram, who's a journalist called Georgina Fuller, who she writes quite a lot of parenting type content for, I think it's like the Telegraph or the Guardian, one of the broadsheets. Anyway, she's a really good journalist. But yeah, I think this typifies life for mums of small children in particular. So, right. Have the children brushed their teeth? When did I last change the sheets? What are we going to eat tonight? I need to buy a bulb for that light. Are mum and dad all right? I should phone them this afternoon. What time is the kids' Zoom class? Why did I walk into this room? The fish tank needs a clean. I need to return those jeans. How much time have the kids been on their screens today? We should go outside to play. Which bin is it again? Garden waste or landfill? I must remember to pay that tax bill. Did I take my pills yet? Why is the kitchen floor wet? Is that laughter I can hear, or is it one of them upset? What time is my first meeting? The chickens need feeding. I need to send that meter reading. Where is the torch and pen? Will the virus ever end? What should we do this weekend? I miss my friends. And I just thought it's just a beautiful way of explaining what goes on in our heads, and particularly busy heads, where you've constantly got that. I am always thinking of that mental list. And I've tried so many methods of, writing that list down onto a bit of paper. Doesn't matter. I've still got all that shit whirring around in my head. And I mean, this journalist, she's obviously a working mum, and she's got a full-time job, and she's got kids, and is taking on all of that kind of stuff. But yeah.
I would like to read an equivalent one that came in just by accident, just in terms of conversation with a friend of mine, because I think it complements it, because that's the mental list and that's going on all the time, right?
Yeah.
And then my friend just ran me through what she went through yesterday as well. So this is her actions list. This is the activities she got up to. So today I was up at 5:30 to meditate. Mind you, but that's so I don't kill someone. Showered, lunchbox packed, dressed by 7, doing breakfast so I can give the dog a long walk before work, picked up my daughter at lunchtime, played as soon as I finished work, made dinner, walked the dog again, put a bookcase together, and then was so strung out and hungry and hadn't called my mother that I missed the thing I really wanted to do because I was done in. And I think that is really interesting, because that idea of kind of, we do everything else. And there was a class she wanted to go to last night that she didn't end up attending. And that was the only thing she'd sort of been thinking about wanting to do all day. But all the energy was gone basically by that point in time. And I think it's sort of fascinating, all the activities that we take on, and we start early, and we try to do all the right things, like let's get up early. And there's another friend of mine who I know gets up, I think, even before 5 o'clock in the morning. And so do I, by the way, but not out of choice. Child and dog. The child came in at 4:30 this morning and had an argument with me about the fact he was not going back to bed. By which point the dog had woken up and decided she needed a wee. So, my day starts pretty early at the moment. But this other friend of mine, she gets up at 4:30 in order to meditate, journal, and go for a run, and then do all the morning stuff. And that's because the meditate, journal, and run are supposed to be all the kind of priority things that she wants to get done. But I think she's just, she's exhausted most of the time. Anyway, yeah. So, like I say, there's quite a lot of research into this idea that rest makes us more productive. And some of these things people will be somewhat familiar with. That there's, the 4-hour working day comes out of that research, that the idea that we don't need to work these crazy 40-hour weeks to be our most productive. And in fact, the longer our working day, the less productive we are. And I think everybody will have felt that sense of, you do a task that probably, if you left it to tomorrow, would take half an hour after a good night's sleep, but you plug away at it and 2.5 hours later you've finished it and you feel completely frazzled, and it's probably not a brilliant job that you've done anyway. So, there's that 4-hour working day. There's a chap called Alex. Oh, chap, I've assumed that. I apologise, Alex. You may not be, but there's a person, more to the point, called Alex Sujin Kim Pang, who wrote a book called Rest: Why You Get More Done When You Work Less. And then my own personal favourite is Kate Northrup and her book Do Less, which she originally wrote specifically for busy mums. In her book, she writes about a number of things that we might not think about as often. We're so busy being kind of productive that we are very cerebral, and we forget that we are hugely dependent on this body, and this body's working really hard to kind of keep us going. So she talks about some things that I think are quite life-changing, which is the idea of asking yourself not how much time do I have to get the thing done I need to do. She asks you to check in with your energy. So how much energy do I have, and to think about structuring the day around your energy. And she also she talks about the fact that energy, we live in a very 24-hour culture, very masculine, patriarchal culture that is very active and very much focused on doing and producing, and that there isn't as much celebration of, or in fact rest gets quite a bad rap in our work culture, and there isn't as much kind of emphasis on the importance of rest and reflection, which are the sort of the opposites as such of planning and acting, planning and doing. Yeah, she has a couple of really interesting mottos. One of them is body first, business second. So she really encourages in her do less philosophy this idea that we should plan our week or our day around when our energy is at its best, and then do the things that are most important in that time, and that we should plan our day around how we are going to do the things that nourish us first, and then the things that we have to do that are our work, which, you know, I grant you is not all that easy for many people. I'll talk more about her philosophy in a minute, but what I'm really interested in is how you've changed things, because I think when you were working in London, corporate job, long week, big commute, etc., 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 I think you'd probably describe yourself as quite burnt out, probably, in some senses. And there wasn't much time for resting, but now you've completely changed your lifestyle, and you operate quite differently. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So I used to work in London for EE. That was my last big corporate job. I worked for them for like 5 years, between 2010 and 2015, so a while ago now. And but I had pretty senior jobs, pretty stressful jobs, and I also had young children at the time. So my first child was born in that time I had 3 children who were like very little. And so I had this full-on job where I worked full-time. I had to work full-time because I was the breadwinner. Stressful job, people like expecting a lot of me, shouting at me, and I had a busy social life with my friends as well, which was very important to me. And then the commitments relating to the children and trying to keep a marriage alive, and that one worked really well. And the household duties and the logistics of the children, like I just had so much going on. And you're right, I think I burnt out in my last job. I only did a year in my last role. Like I kept switching roles in EE. So my last job was absolutely my most stressful. I was in charge of sort of the commercial side of like 100 franchise shops in the EE retail network. And it was just, I just hated it. I worked for an absolute tyrant of a female childless boss who she just couldn't get that somebody was trying to have it all, you know, have the career and the children. And I remember very clearly sat in a meeting with her, me just crying at exhaustion point of after a particularly bad week. And she was like, don't really care, Lynn, you've got to choose either your job or your family. And from that point onwards, I was like, you effing bitch, I'm going to now get redundancy out of this company for that one statement, making me choose between these two things. Should have reported it to HR, but you know what? I didn't. She left. It was an annoying thing. I got my redundancy all sorted, which took months and months of sorting because they didn't want to get rid of me. They wanted me to stay, blah, blah, blah. But I got redundancy out of EE, and then she bloody resigned like a couple of weeks after my redundancy had come through. Anyway, yeah, so I've experienced that frazzled mind. And you unplug your speaker. Beck's got problems with her speakers, but we always know when it happens. So yeah, and what I've been able to do now. So set up my own business in 2015. It was something that had been going for a couple of years as a side hustle, but took it properly seriously full time from 2015. I had the redundancy money from EE to take away any of the financial stress. I was able to pay the bills because obviously I was still the main breadwinner, even though I was self-employed and earning £2,000 a year. I think that's what I earned in my first proper year of Mrs. Mummypenny. So I've worked hard on my business to get it to a point where I now don't have to work really hard. So it's interesting you mentioned that 4-hour day thing, because I would say that's pretty much how I work now. So I've got my business to a point where I'm very well respected in the personal finance world. All of the companies out there, the biggest companies in the world, and all the PR agencies, if they want a personal finance expert, they know that Mrs. Mummypenny is in the running. If they want, you know, a mum in her 40s who's quite relatable, then I'm just on all of those lists because I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
I am considered an expert, which then means that I've been able to charge fees appropriately. So my daily rate is a lot of money. I charge quite a lot of money for quite a lot of money. I don't want to actually share like the amount of money I charge, but it's more than enough to like pay my monthly bills, let's just say, for one blog post. But you know, I've worked hard to get to that point. So that now means that I don't actually have that much work to do to earn the money I need to maintain my lifestyle, because I've put all that work in. So it's like now I can actually sit back and breathe. And I do a lot of that restful time. Like yesterday afternoon, I laid in the garden for like 3 hours and I read my book. Came in when like I couldn't cope with the heat anymore, and you know it was, and yeah, I'd worked all morning, but then I didn't feel guilty. I just felt like, but I did feel that like I had to do the work first to then earn my reward of my rest. But I still made sure I did it. So yeah, I feel very grateful. But you know what? I've put the work in to get to this point. So it's almost like, yeah, I deserve it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're still talking in those terms of like almost an anxiety. Oh, I only probably work 4 hours a day. It's that sort. It's not sort of saying no. I do a really good job. I do a job that is necessary, that helps people. I'm of service to people. Companies know that they can rely on me to produce the work that they need at the caliber that they need, and they're prepared to pay for that service, and I charge a market rate. And yes, that means that once I have done my work in the morning, once I've put my 4 hours in, the rest of the day is mine to do with as I see fit. And I think it's even interesting to me that, you know, there's still that sense in your voice and your story of, to some extent, having to justify it and saying like, oh, but I've worked really hard and I've earned it, and like,
yeah,
I realised
you know, that I finished
it's really interesting, isn't it? That's how strong the culture is. I wanted to clip in a couple of more general points here as well. When we talk about when I talk about the patriarchy, for sure, and I know I mention it a lot, and I will continue to throughout this podcast, I'm not, I want to be really clear, I'm not talking about men and all men are bad. I'm talking about a cultural social system that we live in, that we are all part of, and in fact that we all contribute to. So whether you're male or female, we are the patriarchy. You know, there's no two ways about it. And I kind of wanted to pick up on that that boss you had as well, that I think the fact that she's female and or childless or whatever at that point in time, to some extent, from my point of view, is almost irrelevant, because she's as much part of the patriarchal structure as a he or a they or a them. Like, I don't think it makes any difference what gender you identify with, even necessarily. I think the patriarchy is so strong, and even, you know, as we were saying a few weeks back on the body image podcast, that even if we're like card carrying feminists and we know like that we should feel differently about things, that the nature of any kind of system is often so strong that you can't help but actually live and think and feel a lot of those values, which is why all the sort of work on unconscious bias, I think, is really important across all sorts of different areas. Anyway, sorry, a little bit of a rant there, but just to kind of to pull in that, because I think it's sort of important framing.
I have to pick up on that though, because and this is personal experience and anecdotal evidence from, you know, other people, certainly who have risen up the corporate ranks. But I have generally I've had a lot of bosses in my time. Like, I've been very good at jumping from job to job if I've worked for Tesco's or HSBC, and I've worked for all these big companies. I worked out once, and I've done about 15, 16 different jobs in all these companies, because I just jumped from role to role. So I've had a lot of bosses, and my best bosses have been men who have been sort of quite relaxed and just let me get on with what I need to get on with, but also been quite supportive of me when I have my ultra busy times during the summer months, and then I have my more struggling times in the winter months. But then I could list several women who I've worked for who just, it's just been really, it's almost like women cannot manage me, because I know I'm a challenging person to manage. And it's also probably why I had to eventually step away from the corporate world, because as I admit, I was totally fine when I had somebody like letting me get on with whatever was in my job description and my objectives. But the moment somebody's trying to like interfere with me and you know, comment on my performance or whatever, then things suddenly got really difficult. But yeah, I've certainly never had a man say to me, choose between your family and your job.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hear you. I think fundamentally, you know, we're in a patriarchal structure. I think we know from all the stats and facts and figures, it's harder as a woman to succeed, to achieve, even in, you know, a corporate world that has all its EDI policies in place and what have you. We don't know what their story is. We don't know what they've had to choose between, what sacrifices they've had to make. Usually if somebody is asking you, male or female, aggressively to make a choice, it's because somebody has done that to them as well. It's the same thing with the bully in the playground, right? They've been bullied. So yeah. I think, you know, it's perhaps easier when you're in an environment that might feel more natural and more at home, then you can perhaps be a more laid back boss and a more trusting boss. So I think there's some really other interesting things at work there that are probably not this podcast and a bit more complex. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I do hear what you're saying.
Can we talk about, because I think there's a marked difference between when you have small children before school age, and then once all your kids are like in school and you've got that 6.5 hours a day, you know, that gap in between. I think, and you are in that frantic, frazzled place where you got your like 2 little kids and trying to hold down a full-time job and all the rest of it. It's inevitably an impossible situation, isn't it? But there is light at the end of the tunnel, as I want to say, but just you explain what it's like now for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, so yeah, I think, interestingly, I know other women who have older children, who have children similar age to you, and I think who are still working, say within an employed structure, who also don't prioritize rest and overwork. So I think I agree with you. And actually, I had an interesting, we're still going to sidestep again. I'm so sorry, everybody listening. It's a conversation. What can I say? Join in at any point. But I had an interesting sort of realization over the weekend, and this is quite a difficult one to say, I guess, publicly, which is I find weekends really, really quite hard, and that is because at base I'm an introvert. So I absolutely know that the way I refuel is solitude and walks and journaling and reading and and more solitude and, you know, all sorts of things that just rely on me being me. And one of the things that's interesting sort of on the introvert extrovert piece is that it's not about being a shy wallflower if you're an introvert. It's about how you process information and how you and for extroverts, that processing happens as an external activity. So it happens through being with other people and communicating with other people, or doing something outward. And for an introvert, it's an internal process that ideally requires you to be by yourself and quiet, or maybe not by yourself, but for me it does. And I suddenly realized, so I was trying to, I often try and sit down. My working week starts on a Tuesday. So I have my children at home with me on a Monday, and I have this ideal that I'll sit down on a Monday evening and I'll work out what's happening in my week, and I'll do my energy planning, and I'll do all sorts of things to know what my focus is, so that I can start on Tuesday morning. Yeah, I know what's happening and I'm on it. More often than not, I feel really burnt out on a Monday evening. And this week I suddenly sort of had that realization that it's because from 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon through to 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, it is full on social interaction.
Yeah.
And particularly at the moment when, you know, in order to be, yeah, exactly. In order to be an adult, I don't go to bed until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then I'm waking up at 4:30 in the morning. So I'm barely getting enough sleep. And then I'm woken up at somebody else's behest, not my own choosing. And then the rest of my day kind of tumbles into this, and I have sort of 3 days. So actually what I love about my work, and I too have set up my life differently to not be completely burnt out. Although originally, you know, the reason I chose my hours was so I could be there to pick the kids up at a reasonable hour and to be there for them in the late afternoon and evening. But I love Tuesday morning. Oh, the joy, that moment at 8:10 when everybody's in their respective childcare settings, and I make a cup of coffee, and there's a certain kind of silence, the not worrying silence of where there's children in the house and there's not any noise, and it's just such a relief. And you mentioned before Kat Biles, a coach that we've both done work with. She talks about in her course, I think with PR with Heart, this idea of understanding what need you have that your work fulfills. And I have suddenly very clearly realized that the need I have is to be on my own. It's a need for solitude, and it's a need for quiet, reflective space. And I have built my work, although I do coaching, and that also fills my other need, which is to be of service and of help to others. But my writing work gives me that silence and that space that I really need, which I think is, you know, obviously it's fascinating because it's about me, but no, it's probably not as fascinating for other people. But yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is I'm burnt out at the end of the weekend and I go into my working week saying, come on.
There will be a lot of people nodding their heads in agreement, I think, after that conversation, because particularly I almost, when I was married and being self-employed as well, when I think I felt the same way. Weekends, when every marriage is different, but I think yours is the same as what mine was, just where we automatically took on the load of the logistics and the organization and the sorting out of everything. And that's just a lot, isn't it? That you have to be somewhere at a certain time, and that requires you to have packed lunches for 4 people, or 4 bottles of water, you know, all that kind of shit. And but so I never used to look forward to weekends, but then but now I'm in this totally new life where I only actually have my children half the week, and I have no husband to worry about. So I've every other week I've got like 5 days. So I'm on the pattern with childcare is I have 2 days on, 2 days off, 5 days on, 5 days off. Because I didn't want 1 week on, 1 week off. There was a bit of a battle in the old divorce there about childcare. He wanted 1 week on, 1 week off. I didn't. Let's just say I won that battle. It shouldn't be about battle, should it? It should just be about negotiation, but it wasn't in my divorce. So anyway, I have this 5-day period. I'm wittering, but it's just the most incredible gift. And I've just had like 5 days. And what I'm trying to do now is not pack it with, the social catch up as we're coming out of lockdown. Yeah. So like last weekend, I had from Wednesday until Monday, I only saw another person on Sunday. So I had like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday night with no social commitments. 2 days, I didn't even go out apart from, I don't think I didn't even go out, which made me a little bit guilty that I didn't do my 10K steps. But anyway, that's just another guilt thing. But it's incredible. And I know that's like not something a lot of people experience. But if you go through a divorce, do try to get like the other person to take on more of the childcare responsibility. There's so many relationship split ups that happen where the mum ends up with the kids like 11 days out of 14, and I just think things work a lot better when it's more of an even split between the parents. I know that's not always possible, but it makes such a huge difference to your life. I'm in this incredible working mums divorce recovery Facebook group. It's owned by my therapist friend Jennifer, who I had my therapy with, and there's so many women in that group who are like, I haven't had a night off from my children for the past like 2 years. And I just like, I know these women are in these situations because they've been forced into them. Invariably, it's not always through choice, but God, how would you cope with like 18 months of constantly looking after small children? Mm-hmm. I would not be able to cope. I would not be able to. I'd lose the plot. I'd go to Lally.
Yeah, definitely. I think overall what you're saying there is really interesting. I mean, I would say I had a period of my life when I lived alone for about 3 years, and that I have very happy, fond memories of lots of time by myself. But I think what's interesting is that I was younger, and I definitely did feel it more than I would now. I do have a bit of a tendency of saying yes to things. So I think one of the things that's interesting and a kind of a takeaway, and certainly something that Kate Northrup talks about in her Do Less strategy, is this idea of scheduling time in the diary that is for you and then honoring it. And I think that's a really important thing. And I think for all of us trying to think about rest, and lots of other, I've read some stuff in American Scientific, and there was a piece that had been published by the University of California or something, and there's a lot of research starting to come out that says build in rest as part of your day. And there are 2 types of rest. There's active rest and passive rest. And so, going out and taking a walk is considered active rest. I think even meditation is considered active rest because you're doing something. Right. But just scheduling in a 20-minute walk in your day and sticking to it can have an enormously positive impact on how you feel about the rest of the day, how you feel about yourself, your mental health, and your productivity at work. I think I know that certainly I have lived in such a way that if there isn't something in my diary and somebody asks me to do something, I've just said yes, because it's empty, isn't it? Except it shouldn't be empty. It should be filled with time where I'm saying, well, this is the night that I read. I go to bed early and I read, or this is the night that I, especially in these lovely summer nights, I go for a nice long walk in Nightingale Valley or wherever. So I think, in terms of perhaps starting to give people advice on how you might do that, I think it really is. And I'm saying that as sort of somebody in recovery from being definitely a bit of a workaholic. I think I would say I'm definitely the person that is very good at taking on too much and not saying no, and not marking out time for myself. When I have a better setup, it is because I'm being really clear about this is my time, and it is something that I really struggle with, but it is something that I definitely, I think it's a really worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah, no, it's worth the time to create that schedule, isn't it? Because you'll feel so much better. I think we need to touch on sleep because particularly when you mentioned your friend who gets up at 5:30 to do her meditation and then her journaling and then her run. Is it not more important to have like an extra hour's sleep? Because in preparation for this, I've just been out for a long walk this morning, hour and a half walk. And whilst I was walking, I was listening to a podcast. So I've only just discovered it. It's a really incredible podcast. It's hosted by Gabby. Oh, it's called Midpoint. What's her name? Gabby Logan. And the first one I listened to was her interviewing Russell Brand, which I highly recommend people listen to. I just adore Russell Brand, and I wish I could communicate in the same way he does. Like the words he uses, he's so like poetic, and he's just I just adore listening to his voice. But and his take on midpoint of life, because he's 45, close to our age. And then she interviewed Ruby Wax afterwards. But there was quite a strong emphasis on them talking about sleep during this podcast. And it's like we spend a third of our life asleep. And there's so much emphasis on exercise more, eat better, do meditation. But really, we should be focusing more on get more sleep. Because as you've said, you are not getting enough sleep at the moment. If you could just eke out an extra half an hour's sleep. And I know it's difficult because you have a tiny child.
The option is, and I mean, actually, to be fair to my friend, she's generally in bed by 9:30, and
that's okay then.
She's doing that. My concern is that I actually, and this is very personal, I because I need downtime. I need some time where I need some time where I read. I need some time where I'm just quietly me. Then I prioritize that over sleep, and I almost certainly shouldn't. And I should recognize that this is a short period of time, and it won't always be like this. But it's yes.
Yeah, no, I just think ultimately sleep is the most important method of self-care. And I know you want that hour to read, but would it
and time to see my husband, and time to just be me that isn't mummy me, that is awake being me and not asleep being me. I mean, what I am doing is one night a week making sure that I go to bed before 9 o'clock, so I have time to do a half an hour's read and then go to sleep. That backfired this week because the book I was reading was very gripping. So I went to bed beautifully early, but didn't actually turn my lamp off till about 11 o'clock. That wasn't my best night, though I had marked it out as go to bed early and sort of ticked a box because I was in bed early, just not actually sleeping. So yeah, always a work in progress. That's me, always a work in progress.
Well, but that's, I think, life's a journey, and we are always a work in progress. You are never going to reach that point where you are, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization. there ain't many people that reach that point of self-actualization. Even like the Dalai Lama, I'm sure he's not even got to that point. So we are always going to be learning different ways of coping with our lives, because the thing is our lives consistently change. Like fast forward your life to, when you've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old child, or a 6 and a 4-year-old, they're both at school, your life will be immeasurably different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it will be financially different because you're going to have to pay for childcare. Just got to throw in money a little bit to this episode. But yeah, it's what I think, and we've talked about this before, I do think what you've got your life at the moment is just the most difficult point of 2 small children for a woman, and we predominantly talk about women stuff. I know there are some men in this position, but that's not our focus. It will get better. It will, because I've been through it. It will.
Yeah, and I have every confidence in that. I think it's about just doing the right things right now to get through, I guess. But not to get through, to live well. And I do. I think in the main, I live really well. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not actually getting enough exercise either. I don't think I could do with taking up running, but then just the thought of trying to cram another thing in right now just makes me eek. Yeah, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. That's how we live.
Yeah. Is that I think that's a good place to stop.
That's it. Yeah.
But 30-minute episodes, and I think we've gone and cracked another 50-minute one again.
Yeah, I know. It's because we go off in all sorts of exciting tangents. But anyway, point is, to everybody out there, look, if the next time you think about rest as reward, try work with me here, and let's all try and think about rest not as reward, but as something just as necessary as a good night's sleep. And that rest can be both active and passive. You can take a 10-minute nap is supposed to be really good for you. Apparently, if you take a half an hour nap, you do get a half an hour's worth of burn time as you come back up. It's called sleep inertia on the other side, where you're a bit groggy after your nap. But anyway, those things are supposed to really help your productivity. Historically, we used to more naturally break the day with a nap, and it's something that our culture's kind of knocked out.
They do it in Spain.
Yeah, well, yeah, they do it in the Mediterranean a lot more, I think, don't they, on the continent, and other countries. But yeah, so take a nap. And one thing I would just very, very quickly add, because I'm not getting enough sleep on a Saturday morning now, when Dave gets up, I go back to bed for at least a couple of hours. I know it's not brilliant, because I should be doing more sleep more regularly, but it's at least my one point in the week where I just go to sleep. And I've started to announce it to other people, because I also think the other thing is that we live in this culture of the capable woman, where we're all so busy being superwoman, and and I do all these things and I only have 4.5 hours sleep every night, and we sort of wear it a bit as a badge of honor. And I think I really want to challenge that. I want to challenge that in myself, and when I do it better and in a healthier way, I want to be sharing that with other people, so that they know you don't just have to have a newborn to be allowed to go back to bed. If you're tired, sleep if you can. So yeah, I just want to say that as well.
I think I'm going to write some content on how I managed to run my business on like 4 hours a day.
Yeah,
I think
that'd be really good. That'd be really good.
Because you touched on a really important point, and I know I could feel it whilst I was saying it, but I was justifying it, and I don't need to justify it.
No, definitely not.
It's working.
Yeah, it's working. Brilliant. Okay. All right. Great. So thank you all for listening to our various wonderings on the subject of busyness and womanhood and motherhood, and many other things as well. You have been listening to Mrs. Mummypenny Talks with Ridley Wrights. The podcast music was created, composed and performed by Dan Greensmith. The podcast and the video are produced by Lynn Beattie, and we are your hosts, Rebecca Megson Smith and Lynn Beattie. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for watching and listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.